Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation, to end Ukraine's democracy, to destroy Ukraine's culture.
This is my video update on this Wednesday afternoon, July the 10th. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with Zelensky in DC. Zelensky is attending the NATO summit, and yesterday he spoke at the, I want to say, the Ronald Reagan think tank. Is that where he spoke? I believe that is where he spoke, the Ronald Reagan Institute. And Zelensky, he is not looking so good. He is not looking so positive about Project Ukraine. Very, very panicky. That is the sense that I got from Zelensky as he was speaking yesterday. And you know it's serious for Zelensky when he ditches the green t-shirt and he wears the very posh black t-shirt. You know that Zelensky is panicky and afraid when he breaks out that very nice black t-shirt and he gets rid of that old smelly green t-shirt. And look, Zelensky, he is worried that the United States is going to ditch Project Ukraine and ditch him. And so as he was speaking at this event, Zelensky was saying that the United States needs to remain the leader of the world and should not abandon Project Ukraine. The world, he said, needs the United States. Europe needs the United States. Ukraine needs the United States. That's basically what Zelensky said in his speech. And when he was pressed about a Donald Trump presidency, the man in the black t-shirt, he said, if people of America will vote for President Trump, I hope that his policy with Ukraine will not change. Zelensky is very worried about a Trump presidency. He did say that when he was president of Ukraine and when Trump was president of the United States, they had good relations and they got along. That is what Zelensky said. But he's very unsure if Trump will be the type of wartime leader, the wartime president that Biden was. That is Zelensky's uncertainty about Trump. So yesterday we had this big event, this NATO event in DC. I'm not sure where this took place, but many people were rightly saying that the actual event, the dark blue shadow backdrop and the dim lighting, that this event was very, very Orwellian, kind of evil or Orwellian. That is what many people were saying. But there's a bee right in there. I don't know if you guys can see the bee. But what was I saying? Yeah, I saw the auditorium and the stage and the lighting. To me, it was very, very much like a funeral. And Stoltenberg was speaking at this event, and Biden was speaking at this event. And even Stoltenberg's attire, his suit, it looked like he was attending a funeral. The death of NATO, that's how I saw this event. Even though this should be the 75th anniversary celebration, that's what all of this is about. But it really did look like a funeral to me. I even record the bees. I'm even recording the bees. Anyway, just don't sting me. Yeah, Stoltenberg looked like he was attending a funeral. And his speech, boy, what a speech from Stolte, from the Stoltenator, Stoltenberg, on his way out as the Secretary General of NATO. And Eat Them Bugs, Mark Rutte, is on his way in as the chief of NATO. But Stoltenberg, during his speech, he said that China, Iran, and North Korea all want NATO to fail. They all support Russia, he said. The greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. Quite an admission from Stoltenberg. Huh? I thought that NATO was not a party to this conflict. If NATO is not a party to this conflict, then why is a Ukraine defeat to Russia such a risk for NATO? Why is it so existential for NATO, Mr. Stoltenator, Mr. Stoltenberg?
There are no risk-free options in a war. And remember, the biggest cost and the greatest risk will be if Russia wins in Ukraine. We cannot let that happen. Not only would it embolden President Putin, it will also embolden other authoritarian leaders in Iran, in North Korea, and China. They all support Russia's brutal war. They all want NATO to fail. So the outcome of this war will shape global security for decades to come.
You know, I agree with Stoltenberg in a way that once Ukraine, NATO's proxy, this proxy war that NATO is fighting against Russia, once Russia wins, then NATO will be severely weakened. Will it be the end of NATO? I don't think it will be the end of NATO, but the myth, the mythos of this unstoppable, unbeatable alliance will have been forever destroyed. You guys understand what I'm saying? I think you guys understand what I'm saying. I don't know. I think I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. I had a Biden moment. I had a Bidenopolis moment. Anyway, speaking of Professor Biden, he, Professor Biden, why are you guys letting him speak? You guys, I'm talking about Blinken and Sullivan and Hunter and Dr. Jill and everyone that's behind Biden. Why are you letting him give these speeches? You know he's going to mess up. And yeah, he messed up as he was speaking at this event. He said that Russia must be defeated and NATO must defeat Russia and blah, blah, blah. And eventually, as he was talking about Russia wanting to destroy Ukraine, he mixed up Ukraine with Uranus, the planet, or Ukrainus, or something like that. I don't know. He stumbled and mumbled, and it sounded like Russia wants to defeat the planet Uranus or Ukrainanus or something like that. I don't know, man. Oh my God. What a disaster Biden is. What a disaster. Why are you guys putting him out there to give these speeches? Oh boy. If I was Dr. Jill and Hunter, I would have addressed the NATO member states yesterday at this event with either a pre-recorded Biden message, I don't know, like a pre-recorded video, or maybe a hologram. Do they have that technology? Like an AI voice-generated like hologram of Biden, like something out of Star Wars, like Princess Leia Star Wars. I would have done something like that to address the NATO members instead of putting a live walking and talking Biden to give a speech. But anyway, Biden's going to have a meeting tomorrow with Zelensky, a bilateral meeting with Zelensky. That'll be interesting. Zelensky yesterday also said that Ukraine needs 128 F-16s to fight Russia. He said that Russia has 300 fighter jets in Ukraine at the moment, waging this war, and Ukraine needs 128 F-16s, not 10 or 20. And Zelensky yesterday, he also used the hospital bombing to press the United States to give Ukraine permission to hit pre-2014 Russian territory outside of the Kharkov region, this designated area in the north, covering some of Russian territory that Biden has greenlit for Ukraine to attack, but not with long-range missiles. Zelensky, he is pressing the Biden White House to give him permission to strike any territory with long-range missiles pre-2014. So Zelensky also said that yesterday as well. And we did get a big NATO pledge for Project Ukraine to provide 5 Patriot batteries to the Ukraine military. The United States is going to provide 2 Patriot systems. I believe the Netherlands is going to give an additional Patriot system or Patriot components. And Romania and Germany, they're also going to kick in some Patriot batteries. And the NATO member states are going to give Ukraine Hawks and NASAMS and IRIS-Ts and a patchwork of other air defense systems over the next year. Hundreds of additional air defense interceptors are going to be given to Ukraine over the next year. That is what Washington has promised to Ukraine. So Zelensky is going to get a patchwork of Patriot air defense systems over the next years. Okay, so he's getting that. Basically, he's going to be leaving this event. The way it looks right now is he's going to be leaving this NATO event with a bunch of bilateral agreements, which really mean nothing, and a bunch of air defense systems, Patriot, Hawks, which is an older system, from what I understand. The Hawk system, the Hawk air defense, tactical air defense system, IRIS-T from Germany, stuff like that. Gepard system. That's what he's going to leave with. Bilateral agreements, a bunch of promises, and a bunch of air defense systems. And a possible no-fly zone from Poland, which would be very dangerous, extremely dangerous. A huge risk that Poland gets sucked into the conflict with Russia if they do agree to provide this no-fly zone in the west of Ukraine. We will see. I talked about this yesterday in my video. Alexander went over this in great detail, this no-fly zone that Zelensky is trying to push Poland to create in the west of Ukraine and in Polish territory. So I think that's everything for day one and a half of the NATO event. Did I cover everything? I think I did. Oh, one more story. Here's a good one. NATO's upset with Trudeau. They're very upset with Canada, according to Politico. NATO is losing patience with one of its own members, and it's not who you think. They're very upset with Trudeau because they are saying that Canada is not paying its fair share into the NATO budget. And they haven't been paying their fair share into the NATO budget for many, many years. And they're very upset with Trudeau. But you know what? Trudeau doesn't care. He does not care who is upset with him, because Trudeau made a promise a month ago that Canada is going to defeat the Putin. Remember when he made that statement? Canada is going to hold the Putin and other Russian officials to account for Project Ukraine, and that's Trudeau. He doesn't bow down to anyone. He fears no one. Forget the Justin Trudeau of old. We have the new and improved Justin Trudeau. Big balls. Justin Trudeau. Interviews with half a dozen diplomats from NATO countries make clear that when it comes to defense spending, allies are fed up with Canada. So the New York Times, they put out an article with the title, U.S. officials say Russia is unlikely to take much more Ukrainian territory. Russian forces continue to inflict pain, but NATO leaders gathering in Washington can say that their efforts to strengthen Ukraine are working. This is an amazing article from the New York Times. Don't let the title deceive you. U.S. officials say Russia is unlikely to take much more Ukrainian territory. Don't let that title deceive you. What this article is saying, the point of this article is to frame a Ukraine victory as Ukraine moving closer to the EU and NATO. That is what this article is saying. We need to define a new victory for Project Ukraine. Ukraine is not going to get back its territory. That's what this article says. And this article interviews, who do they interview? Michael Kaufman. Brian Berletic has talked about Michael Kaufman, and he's working at the Carnegie Endowment think tank of I don't know, the Carnegie Institute Endowment think tank of think tankers who talk about think tanky things. I don't know. Anyway, another DC think tank. He works there, and they also interview at the Carnegie think tank of think tankers who think tank things. They also interview the whistleblower whose name cannot be mentioned. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? The whistleblower who started Trump's first impeachment, and then it was forbidden, whatever, to say this guy's name. Remember that guy? His name kind of rhymes with, I don't know, what does it rhyme with? With caramella, right? Kind of rhymes with that word. But yeah, he's also interviewed by the New York Times, and they basically are telling the New York Times that the conflict is effectively frozen. It's a complete stalemate. They believe that it is impossible for Russia to gain more territory, but they also believe that it is impossible for Ukraine to retake territory. And they told the New York Times that what we need to do now is to rethink what a Ukraine victory means. And they believe that a Ukraine victory should now be defined as Ukraine getting closer to the European Union and getting closer to NATO. That is what they believe a Ukraine victory should mean. U.S. officials who reportedly spoke to the outlet privately consider it all but impossible for Ukraine to win back all territories it has lost in Russia. However, they are said to believe that if Kiev's battle performance improves, it could still emerge a victor in the conflict by moving towards closer integration with NATO and Europe. Yeah, so they interview anonymous officials, but they also interview these two guys at the Carnegie Institute. And so that's the definition now of victory, the new definition of victory, getting closer to Europe and to NATO. Yeah, and that is why I believe you have this media zona BBC revision of Russian casualties. Now, I've talked about media zona in the past and how they've been tracking Russian casualties based on open source data, obituaries, and military notices and stuff like that to family members. That's how they've been tracking the Russian casualties over the last 2.5 years, and this has been an initiative with MediaZona, which is a very anti-Putin uh, Russian, I guess you could say Russian publication, started by Pussy Riot. Remember them? And they've been tracking the casualties along with the BBC, and they've been doing this for 2.5 years. And the casualties that they've been tracking are very, very different than the casualty numbers put out by the U.S. Intel agencies or the UK Defense Ministry or the Ukraine Defense Ministry. Very, very different. For example, the casualties that they have right now, using their old methods, are at 58,000, and they're decreasing, drastically decreasing, week after week. You look at the chart, the weekly chart, and you can see that the Russian casualties are sloping downwards, like drastically sloping downwards. And this is much different than the numbers that, say, the Ukraine Ministry of Defense puts out there, which are 200,000 or 300,000 or whatever, the 700,000 that they were talking about a couple of days ago. And now MediaZona, they have decided to use a new algorithm. All of a sudden, they've decided to use a new algorithm to track Russian casualties in the conflict. And so the new algorithm puts the casualties at 120K. And it's a new algorithm that MediaZona says uses all kinds of assumptions and Annalena Baerbock math. I'm exaggerating here, but yeah, Annalena Baerbock math, 3 + 6 × 9 multiplied by 360 degrees to the 720i power. Anyway, it's a new algorithm, everybody. It's a new secret algorithm. And that is where they are coming up with the 120K probate registry estimate. That is what they are calling it. So for example, they have the recorded names count, which is what they were using over 2.5 years to track casualties at 58,000. And now they have the probate registry estimate, which is at 120K. So Brian Berletic, he called this out in a Twitter X post, how this is very, very suspicious. And Simplicius the Thinker, I'll put a link to his article down below, he demolishes MediaZona in an article that he put out. I believe today he published it. And boy, does Simplicius the Thinker demolish MediaZona and the fact that they have now come up with a new algorithm to track Russian losses. Bombshell report claims Russian casualties much higher than thought. Debunked, ? And he does debunk it. And basically, the main point that Simplicius the Thinker makes is that MediaZona, by deciding to come up with this new algorithm for tracking casualties, completely discredits itself. Before, it actually had a very credible way of tracking casualties. It was very believable, the methodology that they were using to track casualties, and they gained a lot of credibility with their reporting on the casualties. But now that they've come up with this new algorithm and they've had to double the casualty numbers, all of a sudden completely discredits them. A big mistake from Mediazona and the BBC. But I imagine that now that we have a new framing of what victory is going to look like, Ukraine closer to NATO, check. Ukraine closer to the EU, check. I guess now you have to bump up the casualty numbers, and you have to make sure that all the casualty numbers from all of the collective West sources, whether it's the UK Ministry of Defense, whether it's the Ukraine Ministry of Defense, whether it's the US, whether it's Mediazona and the BBC, you have to try to make them align, because you want to come out with the narrative that Ukraine has come out of this victorious. It is closer to Europe. It is closer to NATO. And Russia paid a very, very heavy price in this conflict. So you can't have Mediazona putting out a number like 58,000. So that's what happened here. Propaganda at work. So Mediazona and the BBC, they got the call and they said, what are you guys publishing? What are these numbers? What are these as realistic as an estimate as you can get numbers that you're putting out there? We can't have any of this. You guys need to bump this up 2 or 3 times. And that's what they did. All right. So Hungary is in trouble with the EU. Hungary is in trouble with the EU. According to Politico, the EU could end Hungary's presidency. They're very upset with Viktor Orban's peace initiative. How am I doing on time? Yeah, I need to wrap up this video. Very upset with his peace initiative. Orban also met with Erdogan when he was in DC at the NATO event. And Orban said that President Erdogan is an important partner in our peace mission. Turkey is the only country that successfully mediated between the warring parties in the Russia-Ukraine war. So he met with Erdogan. Orban, he's acting as mediators act. He's trying to get as much information as he can. He's on a fact-finding mission, gathering information, gathering data, trying to get everyone's point of view as to how they see Project Ukraine and what they believe could be a viable path to a solution. And yeah, he has to speak with Erdogan because he's right. Turkey almost got a peace deal. It almost mediated a solution. So you have to go to Erdogan and see how he looks at the conflict. And that's what Orban did. And NATO's very upset with him, and the EU is very upset with him, to the point where, according to Politico, they may end Hungary's EU Council presidency. EU ambassadors could move from public condemnations alone to concrete action to restrain Budapest at their meeting on Wednesday. The bloc can get rid of the Hungarian presidency within weeks, argued Daniel Hegedus, a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund think tank. He laid out a series of steps by which Brussels could move the start of Poland's presidency to September 1st, cutting Hungary's term short so as to attach negative consequences to Orban's behavior. This would require a 4/5 majority in the European Council. You cannot have peace. You cannot have a country working towards a solution in Ukraine. Can't have none of that. So you better cut his presidency short. That is Politico. And Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they, according to Bloomberg, during the G7 meeting, get this, Saudi Arabia warned the EU that if they seize, not freeze, seize the 300 billion in Russian frozen assets, then Saudi Arabia will pull out their investments in Europe, in the EU. Wow. MBS. That is pretty impressive coming from MBS in Saudi Arabia. Have we not been saying this over the past year and a half, 2 years? with the Russian frozen assets that if you steal these frozen assets, you're going to piss off a whole lot of countries and princes and kings and oligarchs and high net worth individuals. They're going to pull out their money from Europe and from the United States. Have we not been saying this? Yes, we have. And according to Bloomberg, MBS told, specifically, he told the EU nations in attendance at the G7 meeting, if you guys touch that 300 billion, Saudi Arabia is Audi 5000. We are taking our money and putting it elsewhere. And much of this money that Saudi Arabia has, from what I understand, is invested in France. I believe that is what I read. A lot of money in France would get pulled out if they were to steal the 300 billion. Is it France? Let me see here. One of the outlet's anonymous sources, Bloomberg, one of Bloomberg's sources described the Saudi Finance Ministry's message as a veiled threat, whilst two others said Riyadh specifically mentioned French treasury debt. This likely influenced the G7 to stop short of seizing the frozen Russian funds and opt to turn the interest they generated into loans to Kiev. Moscow has condemned the move as illegal, with former President Medvedev suggesting it could be interpreted as a cause for war. Okay, well, don't take the money. You've been warned by MBS. So Biden, he is signaling that he wants to not only seek re-election and win in November of 2024, but he wants to remain president of the United States until 2029. Is that when the second term would end? 2029. That is what Biden is now saying. Does President Biden commit to serving a full second term if reelected? Karine Jean-Pierre was asked during the White House briefing on Tuesday. She replied, yes. Yes. That is never going to happen. Never going to happen. And you know, with this statement that Biden wants to have a full second term, this has now convinced me without a shadow of a doubt that Dr. Jill and Hunter, they're negotiating with the establishment to get a very nice, juicy exit for Biden. Yeah, we're not talking 10% for the big guy. We're talking 20 or 25% for the big boy. That's what we're talking about. After this statement, this ridiculous statement, that Biden not only wants to be the candidate in November, but he also wants to serve a full second term. For me, that's the giveaway. They're negotiating a big, juicy payday for Biden to step aside. That's what I read from this. I don't know. What do you guys read from this statement from the Biden camp? They're playing hardball. Give us more. Otherwise, we're going to come out with statements saying that Biden wants to serve a full second term. If you don't give us more, then we're going to say that Biden is in this for the next 4 years if he wins. Oh boy. Let's do some clown worlds. So remember the EU Parliament candidate, now an EU Parliament member, that I talked about from Cyprus, Fidias Panayotou. I talked about him like 4 weeks ago, a month ago, when the EU Parliament elections took place, and how he was a YouTuber who ended up running as an independent and winning a parliament seat for Cyprus. Well, he put out a video. He became more of a TikToker now. He kind of transitioned from YouTube and he started to focus more on TikTok. He's also an EU Parliament member. He put out a TikTok video, and he basically revealed what an EU Parliament member gets paid. He disclosed his salary. And, uh, and long story short, EU Parliament members, they make 60,000 euros a month, about 60,000 euros a month. He broke it down, how it all breaks down. Let me see if I have this bookmarked. I think I have the exact breakdown bookmarked. You can watch his TikTok video as well. But basically, the EU Parliament member gets 8,000 euros a month. That's the salary, tax-free. It's a tax-free 8,000 euro salary. Then they get an additional 30,000 per month for his team, and another 5,000 euros per month for an office in his country, 4,000 euros for a PR campaign, and another 10,000 euros a month is paid to invite people to the European Parliament and explain to them what MEPs do. And you also get, I knew this, what he said, what I'm going to tell you now, what he said, I already knew this. EU Parliament members also get 350 euros every time they attend a Parliament session. They get 350, boom, when they go to the Parliament. Yeah. And people were upset when he put out this video. One person commented from Spain saying, I get 600 euros a month in Spain to work my butt off in Spain, and you get 60,000 euros a month to be a Parliament member. Outrageous. Anyway, people are going to be very mad with Mr. Banayotu. Very, very mad. But I don't think he did anything wrong. I think everyone should know the salaries of EU Parliament members and all the perks that they get as well. I don't think this should be hidden. We should also know what Ursula gets and what Kaya Kallas is going to get. Yeah, we should know all of this. Maybe this is public information. Maybe no one has dug into this issue to see exactly how much all of these EU bigwigs and Parliament members get paid. But that was Fidias and his video, which is causing quite a stir. So I think that's my video for today. Did you guys check out the BBC interview of Djokovic, where the BBC interviewer asked Djokovic like 3-4 times about crowd booing? And Djokovic was like, we're like a minute into the interview, and Djokovic is like, look, do you have any other questions to ask me instead of crowd reactions and crowd booing? You've asked me 3-4 questions already. Maybe you want to ask me something about the match or the tournament. And the BBC interviewer was like, nah, I want to keep on asking about crowd booing. And so Djokovic was like, forget about it, I'm out of here. I am out of here. TikTokers, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Football 24 to pick up some football merch. And you can also pick up some limited edition merch. Take care.